Now you could be really boring and use the auto function on your DSLR camera, but don't. No, just no, because Techi is here to help you man up and get away from that horrible auto function. Unless of course you're a woman, and in which case you don't need to man up because you're a woman and not a man. Yeah. Basically, it's all about controlling the light that gets to the image sensor on your camera, and I'm going to focus on 3 ways for you to do this. Focus, because it's a camera. So the first element that you can control that I'm going to focus on is aperture, and that's basically the size of the hole that the light's allowed to pass through to get to the image sensor. So if we imagine we've got a really narrow aperture, then that's less light getting to the image sensor. If it's a wide aperture, then it's more light getting to the image sensor. Now the thing about aperture is, it doesn't just control the light exposure, it also affects depth of field. And this is kind of basically how much of the image is in focus. So if we've got a really narrow aperture, then that's going to put most of the image in focus. So this is good for things like landscape, where you want the foreground in focus and the background. But if you use a wider aperture, then that's going to put part of the image in focus and part of the image out of focus. And this is good for things like portrait photography, where you want somebody's face in focus, but the background may be a little bit blurry. So let's take Yoda as an example. Here's a picture that I took of Yoda with a narrow aperture.
Narrow aperture you have.
And here's a picture of Yoda that I took with a wide aperture. You can see with the wide aperture, he's more in focus in the background, but with the narrow aperture, the whole thing's in focus. Now aperture isn't as simple as it seems, because it's measured in these things called f-numbers. And a small f-number means that it's a wide aperture, and a large f-number means that it's a narrow aperture. Kinda stupid, isn't it? The next element we can control is the shutter speed, and that's basically the amount of time that the image sensor is exposed to the light. So with a fast shutter speed, it's only open for, say, a split second, and for the slow shutter speed, it could be open for something like 30 seconds. So the slow shutter speed is good in dark conditions because it's letting more light in, it's letting it in for longer. But you'll also get a blurring on your image. So if you imagine those night shots where you've got car lights zooming across and you've got that light streak, that's from a slow shutter speed. So a slow shutter speed will blur action, whereas a fast shutter speed will freeze action. So you've got these 2 elements, you've got aperture and you've got shutter speed, and together these can kind of control the light level, the depth of field, and whether action's blurred or whether it's going to be frozen. Another adjustment that you can make is the ISO level, the ISO level, and this is literally the sensitivity of the image sensor. So in a dark condition, you could put up the sensitivity of the image sensor. The only thing is you might get a little bit of graininess. So basically, go out, play around with the aperture, play around with the shutter speed, mess around with the ISO a little bit, and see if you can come up with some great pictures. And don't be lazy and go back to the auto function, or I'll find out. I'll find out.